Hi, everyone. Today, for episode 3, we're going to talk about two of the most famous American composers, George Gershwin and Leonard Bernstein. Now, George Gershwin was born in 1898 and lived until 1937. And Gershwin is famous for so many different things. You know how we were talking in the last episode about a composer like Scott Joplin and how composers and all the great musicians in history are not defined by categories. They didn't only compose swing music or only classical music or only orchestra music or only rock and roll. Great musicians, they move between all of that because it's all creative music, right? And George Gershwin was certainly one of these composers who did whatever he wanted to do. He actually kind of taught himself piano. He taught himself how to write music. And he was just enjoying all the music that was around him. And he wrote a lot of great songs to start off in his career. In fact, one of them is the one that you're learning, I Got Rhythm, one of his very famous songs that he wrote. And as he was writing songs, then they turned into Broadway shows, right? They turned into shows with a collection of different songs. And Gershwin he had a way with melodies and creating kind of instantly recognizable music, which I'm sure you've got a sense for in I Got Rhythm, for instance. But the thing that George Gershwin is most famous for is when he went bigger. And he decided he wanted to blend together what was then considered to be concert hall music, which would have been like your orchestra music or recitals, very serious recitals. Gershwin wanted to combine that idea with jazz and kind of pull together everything that he knew under one roof. And so in 1924, he wrote a piece called Rhapsody in Blue, which was for piano and sort of a collection of a little bit like a jazz band, but a little more classical than that, right? And a little more like an orchestra. And eventually, of course, Rhapsody in Blue would be written for piano and with a big orchestra to play. But we'll get to that in a second. But at any rate, this piece was a sensation because in a way, it was the first time people had heard the music of jazz, the big bands, in the clubs with people dancing, all of these influences and that sort of music was now put in the concert hall, in this concert piece, Rhapsody in Blue, and people went crazy for it. And in many ways, it opened the door for many composers to start bringing in a lot more jazz influences into how they write for orchestra. And we'll kind of see how that continued in the music of Leonard Bernstein. Another great composer who you're going to meet through his piece Prelude, Fugue, and Riffs. Leonard Bernstein was born in 1918 and lived until 1990. Now, Bernstein might be perhaps the most influential American musician in history because he wasn't just a composer. He composed songs like Gershwin. He composed Broadway shows. He composed orchestra music, operas. He wrote everything in every genre and every style. And he loved doing that. He loved just kind of going and writing different kinds of music for different purposes. But he wasn't even just a composer. He was also a conductor, and he was a music director like me, but he was the music director of the New York Philharmonic, one of the biggest orchestras in the whole world. And so by programming music with the New York Philharmonic, whether it was his own or other people's, he was able to influence, not just through his music, but through other people's music, what people considered to be like American music, the American sound. And so just, one of these musicians who history would never be the same because he would inspire so many younger musicians, but also curate the past that we listen to now. And last but not least, he was a pianist, a wonderful pianist. Now, his most famous work is from 1957. It's called West Side Story, and it's actually a Broadway show. It's a Broadway show that later Bernstein took bits and pieces of to turn into orchestra music that is out now, some of the most frequently played orchestra music. But you've probably heard of the piece before, and it's well worth checking out if you want to familiarize yourself with some of the most famous music by Bernstein, any of the songs or any of the pieces from West Side Story. But what I thought would be fun today is to finish up by putting Gershwin and Bernstein together, because this is a video from 1979 of Leonard Bernstein with his orchestra, the New York Philharmonic, and he's playing the piano part to Gershwin's Rhapsody in Blue. So you can see both of them coming together in this performance. And believe it or not only is he playing the piano, but you'll notice there's no conductor, because Bernstein is conducting his orchestra at the same time that he is playing the piano part. It's pretty incredible. So I hope you enjoy checking this out. So I hope you enjoyed getting to hear a little bit of that. Be sure to check out more music by George Gershwin and or Leonard Bernstein, two of the really iconic figures in music. And they're so much fun because when you put on a piece by one of them, you never know what you're going to hear, right? Because they were writing all different kinds of music in different ways for different purposes. And it's always such a surprise and so wonderful to get to know one of their pieces. So thanks for joining me, everyone. And next time, we're actually going to meet two composers working today, two good friends of mine, and see how they're writing music that makes the orchestra swing.